that kind of led me down this path. And I started looking into government, looking into our presidents, looking into legislation, and seeing all the inconsistencies. So it was a progression that led me down to where we're at today.
Like it is, I often talk about when I start talking about some of the bigger, deceptions, delusions going on, they when your eyes are open to it, you remember things you heard and things people told you along the way over your life, and all of a sudden there are little pieces of the puzzle that fit all of a sudden when they didn't before. Yeah. And there is that spiritual deception that's going on above it all. What was I going to ask? And we went out. What, like reading Lucifer Zenith, it really is like a mind. Like I voiced it, right? And I'm sitting there reading it, and I would have to take a break sometimes just to digest it, because it's like it's so much, and I feel like I already am aware of a lot of the things, but you just dug so deep. I think that would be a tough but mesmerizing read for people, but I also think a necessary one. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe you want to go through some of your biggest, I don't know, like awakening moments that you revealed in that book. And then I was going to ask you, what is there a part two? Like, what have you learned since then that maybe even takes it a step further in what you didn't even know when you were writing that?
Well, when I was putting it together, when I started running for office, inadvertently, I started seeing how a lot of the corruption globally and locally was all intertwined. It was very connected, and how we were being played by our own government and representatives and quote unquote the elites, the people who are controlling everything behind closed doors, that are drafting the egregious legislation that really kind of enslave the people. And I realized a lot of this is tied to the Bible. And I didn't, just come to that conclusion overnight. I started researching. I was looking at Bible verses. I was looking at the book of Daniel, Isaiah, Matthew, and then of course I was looking into Revelation. And Revelation really was sort of my father and I's sort of pastime. Right, everybody likes baseball or football. My dad and I would actually play chess and talk about prophecy in the book of Revelation. And I had always had these, outlandish theories and ideas. But my dad was a theologian, as I said before. But he really broke down some of the four horsemen, and those were always my favorite to sort of study at the time, because they're sort of the beginning of troubled times and tribulation. And I started realizing that those horses were, for me, in my definition that I've discovered, was areas of industry. And the areas of industry started to come together as why the colors were what they were, and how it correlated to the events that we were being surrounded by, which is why I started. It really did. Some of this came to me in a dream. Some of it came to me through the research. Some of it, like when I was researching, I looked for it once before, but I didn't find anything. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, there was all this information. And it just like channels started opening up. And I always say that's I give credit to God for that. Maybe it was just a certain word that I plugged in that just opened up a floodgates of information. And when I did that, I realized I think we're on the precipice of tribulation. That's not being hyperbolic. It's just saying when you do the research, the numbers don't lie. The information starts to add up. Eventually, it's no longer a coincidence, because the root word of coincidence is to coincide.
Yeah, there definitely isn't any coincidences. You start to realize that as you do go down the rabbit holes. I've got a picture of Lucifer Zenith. We're going to pull that up next segment, because we're having some tech issues on the video side. But as far as what we're talking about, because I want to get to your opponents too. I feel like maybe we'll save that for the second hour. Maybe we get in to break down the actual election.
Yeah.
What has been the most difficult part of this most recent run up to this election? Because you've had death threats, your family, you've literally lost a job when they found out. Because all these things going on. What's been the most difficult?
For me, I think the most. Let me think about that. It's okay. We got a little bit of a tech issue going on here. I think. I don't know. I'm
going to read one of your own quotes. "The time is coming when all Americans will have to pick a side and fight to maintain their freedoms, or be ruled by a tyrannical government." And we live, the Bible talks about the sheep being led like lamb to the slaughter, and that's truly what we are. And it's because we're ignorant. and it's a lack of knowledge that why people perish. And you've seen it up front. You'll tell people what's going on, and yet they'll still want to support, their favorite, like their candidate that is getting supported and well funded and is being seen on TV. They'll hear you say something and be like, can't you tell my candidate that? I mean, that's one of the most wild things that I've heard you talk about, that like people actually have that audacity. They find a candidate in front of them.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that and it's a big struggle, because the fight is in the state of California is that we want to win, right? But the win is sort of the umbrella phrase that those of us who are tired of all the lies, the gaslighting, a lot of people in California have finally picked up on the fact that it is a deliberate, gaslight, is deliberate swindling going on. Our taxes are being laundered. They're passing egregious legislation. We know it's unlawful. We know it's illegal, but they're doing it anyway. And we just have to win. And there's this gigantic compromise. And it's a compromise that I think a lot of people don't realize. That's exactly where the corrupting government, want you to be. They want you to be at an overwhelming level of compromising so that they can maintain their status quo.
Right. And if anybody is taking even 1% due diligence to look up the Epstein files, to see what's been released, see what's been really proven to be true in the emails and all of the back and forth, they really can't deny it anymore. But I think ignorance is bliss, and that those cliches are true for a reason. All right, guys, stick around. We're going to get things working in order here. I think we're going to cool off this studio because it's getting hot. And we're talking to Daniel Mercury. You're listening to Truth Radio on CRNTalk.com. Stick around. We got a lot more to get into. All right. Welcome. All right. Truth Radio. Welcome back to Jeremy Dayton. CRN Talk.com, truth-radio.com. We're here with Daniel. Mercury. And I think on the up and up here. On the up and up here. Welcome back, brother. Cooling off here. We were getting into the toughest thing. I really should have the tough to pinpoint. You know, let's do this. Is a short segment. I'm gonna go. Let's do this. A short segment. I'm gonna go to the picture. And you know, I know you spent a lot just this. You know, I know you spent a lot of time. And I think just this design. Yeah. And I think it's make sure we got audio here. Because that is over Lucifer Zenith. That is the book Lucifer Zenith. Corrupting nature's God through government deception. Corrupting nature's God through government deception. It's like such a keeping things beautiful blend. Looking at things through a God's perspective. Biblical. Looking at things. What I try to do every day when I'm on the air. What I try to do every day when I'm on the air. Expose the corruption. And you're doing it to expose the corruption. Graphic we use for the backdrop. Let's switch it up. Graphic we use for the backdrop. But what are your thoughts when you see that? You just talked about the four horsemen. But what are your thoughts when you see that? You just talked about the four horsemen. What memories does this bring back? What do you think you need to add? What memories does this bring back? What do you think you need to add to it?
There was anything to add. You know, I don't think there was anything to add to it in the sense of the memory that comes to my mind is me sitting next to my daughter writing. Undergoing chemotherapy. She was diagnosed almost 3 years ago. And for me, after the 2022, I was in the off season campaigning and really trying to get him out there. And you know, it was a heavy burden when I was doing the research and I was, sitting in the hallway. I had my laptop with me. My son, he's homeschooled, so he would bring his laptop or his books, and we all couldn't be in the same room. And some chemo that kids have to take is very toxic. In fact, they don't want people in the room. They're literally on like a full mask shield and thick gloves underneath, gown that's like a double gown. And this is the kind of is being injected into my daughter, and subconsciously, it was hard to focus, but I knew that I needed to turn my attention over to so that I wouldn't become overwhelmed with the emotions of my daughter, and watching her deteriorate from my eyes. But for me, it was like you see the building on fire. It was burning in me that I needed to get this information out, because I can see our state burning up, and I can see these horsemen galloping. I can see the trials and the troubles coming our way. And this is why I told people we don't have a lot, we don't have much more time. I think if we don't get this election right, and if we don't really start, rising up and waking up and really, pushing back, for what is, I know a lot of people hate to hear this, but what is godly? When we talk about the Bible, we talk about the Old Testament and New Testament. The New Testament was the New Covenant, right? And those who believe in Jesus, right, are God's chosen people. Our covenant of this nation is the Declaration of Independence, and our forefathers were genius about it, which is why this nation had been so blessed. Whether you want to consider them to be deists at best is irrelevant to the fact that they knew that freedom was God's plan, always has been, and slavery is Satan's plan. And it's something that going on with all the stress and the strain. So I wrote that book to kind of nutshell all my information to get people started. Not everyone agrees with it, and that's okay. It wasn't designed to overwhelm you and try to get you to believe everything I said, but it's designed to try to show you where inconsistencies are at. Whether you believe in the Bible or not, I show you a lot of other issues that are going on. Even if you removed the horsemen, you knew that certain areas are negatively affecting the people from prosperity, and that was really the point. And I've been accused of being a charlatan or utilizing the campaign to try to sell books, but even my campaign team will tell you, they get upset with me when I bring like 20, 30, 50 books and I give them all out for free. Right. That's on my dime, or I mail them out.
Right.
and on my dime. It's
Right.
because it's about the information. It wasn't about the money.
Well, yeah, and that's clearly, again, it's from ignorance,
yeah,
because
and
people
that's
don't
clearly,
realize
again,
you've
it's
been
from ignorance,
offered
'cause people don't
money
realize
multiple times. You've been
offered
threatened to
money
bow out.
multiple
You've
times.
been like enticed
You've
to
been
bow out. You've
threatened to
been
bow
enticed
out.
to
You've been like
join one of your
enticed to bow
opponent's
out. You've been
campaigns.
enticed
All
to
these things
join
that
one of your
would have
opponent's
been the easy
campaigns.
road, and a
All
lot
these
of people
things that
without the moral
would have been the
backbone
easy
would have
road, and
taken
a lot
and
of
be
people
like, "Hey, that's
without
a
the moral
win."
backbone would have
But
taken.
you truly
and be
care
like, hey,
about the
that's a
people,
win.
so you're sticking in it. So
But you truly care about the people, so you're sticking
we
in
still
it.
got a lot more to talk about. Like I
Uh,
said, it's a short
We still
segment.
got
You're
a lot more to
listening to
talk about.
Truth
Like I said, it's a
Radio
short
with
segment.
Daniel
You're listening
Mercury
to
on
Truth Radio with
CRNTalk.com.
Daniel Mercury on
Stick around. We will
CRNTalk.com.
be
Stick
right
around.
back.
We will be right back.
All right. Welcome back to Truth Radio.
Welcome back
I'm
to
Jeremy
Truth Radio.
Dayton,
I'm Jeremy Dayton, CRNTalk.com, Truth-Radio.com. We're here with Daniel Mercury. Daniel for Cal Governor.
It's just weeks away. It's hard to believe it's another
weeks away. It's hard to believe it's another election already. And it's hard to believe it's been,
7 years you've been on
this journey.
You've been the ringer, man.
And
you know
been through the ringer
firsthand what so many of us read about. We
firsthand what so many of us read about. We hear about. We see people being
ostracized, being canceled.
being
We're taking stances that you're taking and taking rather strongly. You've been called a racist, a white supremacist, an anti-Semite. Anybody who stands on the word of God will usually be called those things.
Anybody who stands on the word of God will usually be
homophobe,
called those
everything.
things, a bigot, a homophobe, everything.
What's been your worst moment? Maybe give like an example of your worst moment.
Maybe give like an example of your
how
worst
maybe
moment. Like
it turned it for your better. Obviously we gotta have grace and patience with people who don't show it in return. That's tough though.
But
I think one of my probably I've had maybe I can think of two or three off the top of my head. I think during the recall, one of my worst moments was when I was on. I vaguely remember. I think it was Hoodstocks.
I vaguely remember the name.
And
I think it was Hoodstocks.
I believe the podcaster's name was Lucky.
I believe
that was definitely a one-sided conversation. He had a great outline of questions. I could tell he had gone on my website and at least looked at some of my policies. So he really didn't have much against my policies. So he was trying to dig in for other things. But he had an audience, in the Latino community. It was really one-sided, trying to paint me to be a racist, and it wasn't really working for for him, you know, but some of the callers that were coming on, you know, started getting pretty foul and aggressive. And I had already been shotgunned before, you know, on previous other interviews and stuff, where it was like, and I got you moment and stuff. So I started getting used to that. So I remember I'd asked the podcaster, I think his name was, and I said, you know, listen, to keep the conversation moving on, you know, there's going to be people I know are going to want to throw, you know, hot tomatoes, raw tomatoes, whatever, and say vulgarities. We got to keep the conversation going on. If somebody gets like that, you know, let them say their piece and then turn it off and move to the next person who has a legitimate question. There's no discourse. And he kind of got up and walked up and he went in the back and he started laughing because people started getting like, you know, horrendous and started vulgarities. And I just dropped down and I lowered myself to that level and I engaged in vulgarities right back. Now it kind of squelched everything, but I had wished it didn't get to that level.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, unfortunately, some people, you can't talk to them any other way but that way.
Yeah.
And it happens. It's, you know, I'm human. I'm not perfect.